Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before we get into it with our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Megan Juedes on the podcast. Did it, everyone. She's coming to us all the way from Wisconsin, and I'm not gonna lie, we already recorded this podcast last night, but I looked at the audio and video, and it was not ideal, so we're doing it again. So I've given her most of the Wisconsin jokes already in the first podcast, and I don't want to have her go through it again, so I'm going to be a little light on it. I'll still have a dig there every once in a while, but, we're going to be a little bit more nicer tonight. But, yeah, she's a bodybuilder on here to, just share her health and fitness journey and discuss, all things health and fitness. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Megan, thank you so much for coming on again.
You're welcome. I'm glad to do it.
She said that it was her first podcast. Technically, it's her second podcast now, so she's got a lot of the nerves out and everything like that too. But I was gonna ask what the weather's like, but we're both dealing with a snowstorm right now. I don't know if it's snowing over there right now, but we're still getting snow. I got like 6 inches on my car at work, so I was happy about that. But
we got freezing rain today. It's barely flurries right now, so we might get like an inch overnight. We have not been getting hit with all the snowstorms. Like everyone else around us is getting hit.
Another thing that I guess is better in Wisconsin than it is here, but we're not going to get into that right now. So before I start to cry on this podcast, Megan, why don't you just give us your backstory on what inspired and motivated you to get in shape and how that led to where you're at right now?
Yeah, so really my journey has been all over the place. I was semi-active when I was younger. So I did softball and I managed football, so I was always really active. And then I did strength and conditioning classes in high school. But when I went to college, my health lifestyle did not exist, is how I'll put it. I joined my sorority, and all of our activities revolved around drinking for the most part. Or you had social gatherings, so there's just a lot of food. And let's be honest, none of us wanted to go work out because you're hungover or you're in class. So exercising was not a priority. And you're a broke college kid, so you really aren't focusing on eating super healthy. You're eating whatever the dining halls had. I think it was my sophomore or junior year, one of the two. My boyfriend had asked me when the last time I had worn my jeans was, and because I'd been wearing leggings so much, and actually, I think it was like the yoga pants craze at that point too. So it wasn't even like leggings now; it's a flared legging too, so it was real attractive. And that was the moment I kind of realized I had put on enough weight where I did not want to go and buy jeans because I didn't want to buy bigger jeans, and had gotten up to 204 pounds, which being 5'5", 204 is a very round shape. And I don't think my sorority house had a scale in it, so we never were stepping on scales anyway. So that did not help either. So then
what kind of discount sorority is that? You're not weighing yourself constantly and be like, Becky, we're sorry, we're going to have to kick you off. You're just a little too big.
My sorority was more known for the drinking, not the skinny sorority, I guess. I mean, we didn't have really overweight girls, so I was probably one of the few overweight girls in the sorority at that point. But yeah, we weren't all crazy like that. Definitely enjoyed the activities. So my best friend, she had gotten into the whole Beachbody thing and was like a Beachbody coach. So I had gotten started with that after I had actually graduated college, was when I really got into that. And with Beachbody, I had lost about 40 pounds on my own, which is great. Got down to a more manageable weight, but wasn't really super happy with how I looked yet. And then I stumbled into the world of Katie Hearn's challenges through Instagram, since that came about when I was in college, and met some of the girls that were doing the challenges with me that were actually local to me, and got connected with their coach, where I did my first prep for bikini. And that was really macro based, but not with a lot of guidelines. So it was really eat whatever fits your macros, not eat the healthy things that fit your macros. So when I competed in bikini, I was a fat, skinny bikini girl and should never have gotten got dead last. I did 2 bikini shows that year, dead last. And then when I had done my quality stalking of Haley and found her as a coach, we did a lot to recomp my body and take it from this fat, skinny bikini girl to this figure physique. Um, where my first show with her, we took second place at a regional show. Um, then we put in some major work in my off season, and then I prepped during COVID. So I competed. I had, I think, 2 or 3 shows get canceled due to COVID, and then we finally competed in June of 2020. And that prep ended up being about 8 months long. And I took first in my height class, which was an amazing feeling. So qualified for nationals. And then again, went really hard with my off season. Where then we just competed at nationals in Orlando, Florida this December, where I took 5th place. So I requalified for nationals so I can go again this year.
That is awesome. And can I say, the whole time you were talking, I was just thinking, because you mentioned those cafeteria food in college. I would work out like 2 hours a day in college, so I could literally eat whatever I wanted. But I remember just eating hamburgers almost every day, because they would have the hamburger place and they'd have the pizza, and like literally, like I did so much. Like my warm up was like 45 minutes of running, which is probably why I started to hate it. And then I would work out for like an hour and a half, and then I would go have like 3 or 4 hamburgers, some Laffy Taffy, and like an ice cream, just because I was working out and burning so many calories. But that was the young years. I can't get away with that anymore, unfortunately. So, I had a little smile on my face just thinking about, the good old days when I could get away with that. But, and it's time to grow up now. But I mean, with this whole journey that you're talking about, this is just so much more of a mental sport than it is a physical sport, and people do not understand that, especially that don't follow the sport, because they'll just notice the changes and they'll just be like, "Oh my God, Megan, you look amazing." They don't understand the mental change that has taken place as well, and that is 10 times more important than any physical change can ever happen. But what has this journey been like for you mentally?
Mentally, I definitely used to be very much an introvert, was not confident at all, never thought I looked good, never. Not that we ever think we look the best in bodybuilding. We always think we need bigger, more conditioned, leaner. But I've definitely just come so much more out of my shell as a person. I feel like I have no issue talking to people in the gym or starting conversations, building friendships, especially with the women I meet at the shows. And I've just developed such a unique friend group around the sport as well.
Now, and this is also an interesting question that I just thought of. If you could go back and talk to the 204-pound version of yourself and tell her that eventually you would be on stage in a bikini in front of everyone, what do you think she would say?
She would tell me to go fuck off.
I've always found that so fascinating, especially for the people that like do the weight loss stuff. It's like, just, and how have you also dealt with just that change? Like we talked about mental too, but like how have you dealt with that mentally? Because it's fascinating to see how your body can change, but just a lot of times, especially people that were on the heavier side to begin with, you sort of identify as that person then, just because you're kind of used to seeing yourself like that. But then when you shrink down to, being a skinnier version, how did you deal with that mentally? Because it is a whole change really on how you view yourself as a person. For unfortunately, that's how a lot of people do view it though.
Mhm. I would say my first year of competing in bodybuilding, even though I got down to about 130, I never thought I was small enough. I was never happy with my overall look. But I will say when I switched over to figure and really focused on putting on muscle mass versus just being in, God, when I was in high school and even college, every girl wanted the thigh gap, they wanted the stick body, and like so that was always just this unachievable thing that I always thought I needed to look like. And then when I really went into figure, I was like, you know what? Screw that. I want to put on muscle mass. I want to have the biggest shoulders. I want to have the biggest back. I want to be that muscular freak that you see when you walk into the gym.
Well, first of all, that thigh gap is achievable. You just eat 100 calories for a year. It's not that hard, everyone, okay? It's just, geez, but that's a whole different story, okay? All these people just aren't dedicated, okay? That's my excuse then, okay? But they don't diet hard enough, and they don't, I mean, so what if you pass out a couple times a day, You just get up and you do it again. But no, I'm joking, everyone. I don't want to be that one guy who's like someone all of a sudden passes out and dies because I said that, so I have to add a disclaimer down at the end of that. But I love to also talk genetics on this podcast, and discussed this before because we already did this podcast, but I mean, everyone always has that one body part that really takes off that they don't have to train as much, and then everyone always has that one body part that they just have to drag behind. They have to train to oblivion. What was one body part that really took off for you, and what was one body part that really just dragged behind that you had to train to oblivion?
Yeah, so for me, I'm genetically gifted with very large legs. So for me, it was just really getting them more conditioned, and we still work on building some muscle. But I've always had very large legs, which is great for figure. Um, and a lot of girls actually struggle putting on that mass with their legs. What is truly lagging for me, and that I'm still working on building, is my shoulders. I just need bigger shoulder caps all the way around.
Yep. And unfortunately, it's the exact opposite for me. But hey, I'm 6'3". I got the excuse. But you know, I love asking that question because it does just show how different everyone is, and everyone's body parts are different. I had one guy who was like, "Yeah, my forearms really took off," and I was like, "What? Like, okay." I mean, if you're doing like those squeeze things that you do with the, yeah, I mean, first of all, I knew one idiot in my college class. He'd be that guy in the back just doing that the entire time, and it's like, cool, bro. What are you what are you doing? But hey, you know, he did what he did. But I mean, also on top of just physical training the sport requires, the nutrition is one thing that isn't talked about nearly as much as it should. What are some of the bigger nutritional changes that you made when you really started to take things seriously?
Really just eating very clean foods. So from switching from the macros to an actual regimented meal plan where I have an entirely scheduled meal plan. I have 5 meals a day. It's the same exact proteins, carbs, fat sources every single day for every single meal. And then when I was on macros, that was all like it was the if it fits your macros lifestyle was so big, and you were trying to force a slice of pizza to fit your lunch, and then you're like, okay, I'm out of carbs, so I'm having, I guess, a salad for dinner. But it was so inconsistent from day to day. So really, when I got serious was when Haley put together my actual meal plan that I follow every single day.
What was that first like getting adjusted to that meal plan life? Because that for me, I look at some of those and I'm just like, you don't tell me what I'm gonna eat. I eat whatever I want. Like, what was that like though? Sort of learning that like everything, a lot of things have to be structured, and that's one thing, especially with the bodybuilding life, that a lot of people at first really do struggle with.
I love the structure of it. It actually made my life easier because when I was doing all the macro stuff, you would look up all the fun recipes and have to figure out how every single thing was going to fit. And if you wanted to eat something different every day, it was just very hard to grocery shop and was also very expensive. So I actually probably save money and time just by being able to go through my same routine. And I love my meal plan.
We talked about it before, but I mean, you are not a beer girl, which I mean, from Wisconsin, I was dumbfounded by that. I was just like, wait, what? There's unicorns over there, I guess, apparently, but you're a wine girl. But how do you incorporate wine into this lifestyle? Because I mean, when I hear bodybuilders, I don't really think about people that drink a lot of wine.
So, like we were talking about yesterday when we recorded, I had brought 2 bottles with me to enjoy post-show. I knew exactly which ones I was gonna have. But one, I'm in prep, it's no alcohol, which for me, cutting alcohol isn't an issue. But
That's Wisconsin for lying, by the way. That it wasn't an issue. Okay, we're not gonna lie. We're not gonna say that like she wasn't just like shivering in a corner, basically, and getting the sweats.
I wasn't having withdrawals. But in off season, typically I'll have a cheat meal a week, and I will, at that point, enjoy wine. I'm not going to go drink a bottle by myself, but I'll definitely have a glass, maybe 2, depending on who I'm sharing with.
Okay, I'll believe the not drinking a bottle by myself when I see it. Okay, but glug 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 glug. Yeah, Wisconsin. Anyway, okay, so I have already said some in Wisconsin, so I'm just gonna stay it off right here. The obvious. Yes, they have a better football team than we have ever had, and yes, they are more successful. And I'm like Eminem in 8 Mile at the end, where I'm gonna admit all of my fault, so then you can't insult me anyway. So then I can just insult you. Then really, so it's like, yeah, you're better. Okay, you win. Blah 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 blah. Okay, yeah. So we got that out of the way. But all right, back into bodybuilding now because I'm sorry if anyone gets annoyed by me bringing up all the Wisconsin stuff, but you got to realize that being a Minnesotan and seeing Wisconsin and being a Wisconsinite seeing a Minnesotan, it's just natural to not to
In
just
our blood.
yeah, it's just we see red. I mean, it's like let's be honest. I mean, it's people talk about all these other rivalries, but they don't talk about Minnesota and Wisconsin enough, which they should. But back into bodybuilding, I mean, posing is one of the things that people do not understand that are outside the sport. It's one of the hardest things in this sport. It's harder than your nutrition. It's harder than your working out. What has your experience with posing been like?
Posing for me has been pretty easy. It's almost like how my legs are where I'm very genetically gifted. Posing has just always come very easily. I was very smart to hire coaches right away when I started with bikini. And then when I moved in figure, I wasn't about to try to figure out everything myself. Um, and I knew if, even if I had a great physique and had the best conditioning, if my posing was crap, it didn't matter. So I've always invested in that. And I will say that I probably had my absolute best posing for nationals with working with Kenny Wallace, and just the small tweaks we would make throughout my prep, depending on how my conditioning was coming in, just made the world of difference.
Okay, you did this last night too, and I love that you did it because then I can finally. It's Kenny Wallach, not Wallace.
Is it?
Yes, Wallach. And I thought I got names wrong on this podcast. Tell me I had to memorize her last name, and she can't even memorize. No, but I had to correct because honestly, I wanted to last night, but then I was like, okay, I'm not gonna do it because I'm not gonna be input. But like you said it a second time, I was like, okay, we gotta, because I don't want her going around and be like, I got Kenny Wallace as my coach, and everyone's like, who? Like, what are you talking about? Like, oh, Tom Bruce is also your friend too, yeah, basically. But no, so I had to do that, everyone. And any time that I can get to show up a guest from Wisconsin, I have to do it. So it's Kenny Wallach. Let's be honest, literacy is not that important into our neighbors from the east. So every once in a while you gotta just be like, hey, help a neighbor out. But I mean, with the posing too, what is your favorite pose and what is your least favorite pose?
Um, I love hitting a front pose, especially if I can get my quads to really flare up and light up. And to me, just side posing is kind of boring. So those are my least favorite, I guess. It's not that I can't hit it; it's just that it doesn't wow me like a front or a back pose does.
And I mean, yeah, but the one thing that I will say about the back though is that you can let your smile down. You don't have to be, because a lot of people don't realize the jaw muscles from smiling can be some of the sorest things after these shows, because like I've had times where people have gotten points knocked off for not smiling or putting their smile down even for a couple of seconds. So that's another one of the underrated things. But with the posing too, just that conditioning that it takes to maintain that pose for as long as they sometimes make you do it, that's the hardest thing for so many people. How long did it really take you before you really felt like you developed sort of that stamina to be able to hold those poses for as long as they sometimes make you do?
I would practice several times a week, probably about 5 to 10 minutes at a time. And it was holding each pose for about 5 seconds, and you just kind of keep going through it over and over again. Um, so it's just repetition and getting used to just keep making those turns, because on stage you have no idea how long you're going to be up there, and you have no idea how many times they're going to move you around or rotate you.
And when you're on that stage, does time seem to slow down or does it seem to speed up or is it a mixture?
For me, it really feels like it slows down. At least when you're holding a pose, it feels like it slows down.
No, and that's, I mean, I can't really compare that much to it except like being a pitcher on the mound where it's sometimes time does seem to speed up, sometimes it seems to slow down. But yeah, I couldn't imagine being up on that stage myself. So I always say, for as much grief as I give some of these bodybuilders, they still do something that I could never do. So that's more props to them. But when you're also on that stage too, and being a part of that community, I mean, it's a community that really does support each other, especially with the female side of things, where with the males, it might be a little bit different, but they still support each other a little bit. But how important is it to you to know that when you walk up on that stage, you generally have so many people that care and support you just on that stage with you in general as well?
Honestly, it's such a, you can't almost, I don't even know. It's hard to sometimes put into words the amount of support you get from the people that you know, but also the strangers that you've never met, or the people you're just meeting backstage for the first time that are complimenting you on how your physique looks, and just the amount of support you give to the people that place better than you, when you're going through the awards, and you're genuinely happy for them. So it's just really nice to have.
And when you're talking about like people like complimenting you, also I got to go back to like when the college years. You Is it hard for you to sometimes accept compliments about your body now that like people do give them to you when like they might not have given them to you in the past? Because that's another thing that a lot of people that I've talked to, that like, and that's one thing that I even found strange myself, because I was the opposite. I was a twig basically, where then like I was never gonna get compliments like, hey, stretch nice, yeah, stuff like that. That's the compliment that I got. So it was hard for me when people were like, oh wow, you look great, to just be like, wait, what? Like honestly, was that ever anything with you?
Yeah, I would sometimes be a little thrown. It was definitely interesting. After I'd been competing for a couple of years, I was out in Madison, which is close to my hometown, and I had run into like a whole bunch of guys that I had known from like high school and college. And it was like, whoa, I was on their radar for the first time ever. And they're like, oh my God, you look so good. I'm like, you didn't give me the time of day back then. I'm not giving it to you now.
Meanwhile, for me, I'd be like, just like me, just do it. No, but that I'm just kidding. But no, and let's be honest, they were probably drunk too, so that's why they probably thought you looked better than you did. So no, but that's no. I have honestly never that I only said that joke because that did happen to me one time, where literally a girl that I went to high school with saw me, and then the next well, I'm not gonna say the next morning, the next breakfast that we had, basically, she came to me and she says, "Oh, you looked a little bit different back last night," and I was like, why the f would you say that, first of all? Why the So I left, like 5 minutes after that. But yeah, that's my little story there. So again, everyone, just laugh at my suffering. Don't laugh at the guest suffering, because I can guarantee that I've suffered more than a lot of these people that have been on this show. But I mean, back into it. I don't want this to be just let's laugh at Ryan podcast, but I give everyone a taste, every once in a while. But I love to talk off season and the post show blues, because it's one thing that is not talked about as much as it should be. Because a lot of people just don't understand that look that you present on stage, it's not sustainable. And first off, what was that like when you first came to realize that? And second of all, has it gotten easier for you to accept that as your career's gone on, that like, hey, I am gonna have to put on some weight after these shows?
Yeah, so after my first year competing, when I was officially done with bikini and I went and had my Oreo binging, was eating whatever I wanted. I think I had actually stopped working with a coach in the off season, which is probably the worst thing you can do. Um, and had put on a bunch of weight. Like, I think I went back up to 160 or 170. It's like it skyrocketed real fast. Um, but it definitely has gotten easier, as the years have gone on with prepping. That I I know there's a set point that my body wants to get back to feel healthy and feel strong. So it is a lot easier. I know that I'm gonna get to it. So it's also, you have like three different sizings of clothing. You're like, okay, everything that's small prep, that's packed away. It's off season clothing time. So you're not getting hung up and having the mental issues with, okay, I'm wearing my large leggings now because we've got mass.
Yeah, and I mean, on top of just all the stuff too, how do you do though with having like two sets of clothes, basically? Because like clothing options, first of all, the clothing brands were not built for women with muscles, especially. I mean, men with muscles have a hard enough time as is, but women, I mean, it's like times that by a billion. How do you deal with the fact that your clothing options can be severely limited on sometimes both ends of the spectrum?
Yeah, so I probably live actually most of my prep, I probably was living in sweatpants. I work from home, so I like 100% of the time I probably had sweatpants on all the time, and they were like yanked tight. Or I maybe wore my leggings that I was going to go to the gym in later. But if we were going out and I needed to dress up somewhere, I have, I think, jeans that go down to like size 6 or 4, and then jeans that go all the way up to like 10 or 12 in my off season. So it's a wide range. And we definitely rely on skinny jeans, because normal pair of jeans, the waist and your thighs, nothing's gonna fit in a normal pair of jeans.
Yeah, that's one thing I wish they would come up with, like a jean brand that would stretch and like be more adaptable. And some people claim that like in Europe, I think in England actually was the one guest that I had on that said like, oh, they have a brand over there. So I've not heard of anything like that myself, but
Fit jeans, but I haven't bought any to give it a try.
yeah. So I one of these days, I think I might just for product endorsement, I might just get one myself and then try it on and see what happens there. But yeah, because I was gonna say like that's $1 million invention if anyone hasn't come up with something like that itself. Like I can't believe no one has ever thought of like a legging that basically looks like jeans or something like that. I don't know, but I'm not bright enough to have that idea. Otherwise, I would be a millionaire right now, and you'd be talking to me, and I'd have my butler serving me something while we're doing it, probably giving me like a neck massage while I'm talking to you, basically. But those are the breaks, unfortunately. But along with just the reaction that you get from former competitors and other people on the stage, what is that like with the general public? Because like we talked about before, but I gotta ask again, just because I love asking this. You are sort of like a mini celebrity where it's like you are gonna get stares, you are gonna get that extra added attention. What has that been like for you, just sort of getting used to that fact that like, hey, yeah, I am gonna draw a lot of people's attention, just even being myself, really.
Yeah, so I probably get stopped the most when I'm at like the grocery store, especially if it's the summer and I'm wearing a tank top. And most of the time I was stopping at the grocery store after the gym too. So I still have somewhat of a pump still in my body. So that doesn't make anything better either. So you're extra freak showy ish looking. But I think it's you get used to how many people look at you and you just kind of walk past it for the most part. But I have had people stop me like while I'm checking out groceries and like ask where I work out and like who is my trainer and like basically what's the magic behind looking like I do.
Yeah. No, and that's I would I had that a couple. Well, actually, my favorite story ever with that was I was at a grocery store and some old lady. She must have been like 90 years old. I'm surprised that she was even walking. She came up to me and she goes, "You look big and strong. Can you help me reach the thing up there on the top shelf?" That's like, how can you say no to that? Now, if I want to be funny, I would have been like, no, but but I of course I helped her, but that was awesome because and then she's like, ooh, you look big and strong, and when I lifted, she's like, oh my dear, basically, she's like one of those old people where I was like, okay, you're great, keep being you. But I will say though, out of all the reactions, what is it like with kids? Because I've always found that kids give the best reactions because they don't have that filter of like, what should I say and what shouldn't I say. They're more of like, mommy, what's that kind of people. So yeah.
I feel like I haven't had kids do that to me. I have 3 nieces and they've honestly been growing up while I've been doing this. So they've seen this over the last like 6 years and my oldest niece is 5. So it's been their whole life. They've seen all different sizes of Aunt Megan.
So what is their reaction like to that? Because I've always found like the children's perspective of this sport is the most fascinating because they have no idea what's going on, or they have an idea of what's going on, but they don't really get sort of like why, or they don't really get the inner workings of it.
So they like using me like a jungle gym when I'm prep and when I'm really lean. So they like being pressed and they like to be curled and squatted. So it's an endless cycle where I have to try to hide from them because I'm so tired.
Oh, I remember my uncles back in the day when I was young. We'd do the Superman and all that stuff. Yeah, that was yeah. So but you got the perfect look for it too. So that's the only problem. That's the problem with bodybuilding is that as you get closer to a show, people do not understand that you're not at your strongest and your most durable. So yeah, like all the times you'll probably get asked to move and all that stuff when it's like, yeah, your body is not really telling you.
I'm tired from the walk.
Yeah, oh yeah. I'm tired. And how do you deal with that last few weeks mentally? Because that is, I mean, luckily you do work from home, so you don't really have to deal with that many people. But how do you deal with see, I got tongue-tied and twisted. So how do you deal with that? Because it's very stressful for people, even if you have the most ideal world of all time.
Yeah, so typically my peak week, I will take some time off from work just because I want to keep my stress levels really low. I don't want to have any cortisol spikes and start retaining water for some stupid thing that happens with work. Also, with just the amount of check-ins you have to do with all your meals, it just is way more convenient to not be working. But the last few weeks is honestly, to me, it feels kind of like a breeze. You've done like almost all of the work. At that point, you're getting ready to start carb loading a little bit and have kind of the light at the end of the tunnel. So It's to me, it doesn't seem that bad ever.
That's a positive way to look at it, because for me personally, like I'd be the one that would be like scratching my pantry door, just being like, "Give me something good to eat." But again, that's the drive and dedication that this sport requires that I don't think is talked about enough, because that's what separates, the average person from someone in the gym that or someone that's a bodybuilder. But another thing that separates the people from just being bodybuilders from the average people is that drive to work out on days when your body is telling you, yeah, let's not do that. Where do you think that you get that drive from? Because that's a special gift that not everyone has.
I it's I think just discipline. I've been doing this for so long that even on the days that I don't wanna work out, I know I'm gonna feel so much better after it. And honestly, I always look forward to the part of my day when I get to go to the gym. Like I have it blocked off on my calendar for work. Like, okay, nope, this time I'm signing off. I am heading to the gym. And it's just kind of my decompressing time and I can focus solely on just pushing weight.
If you could train just one body part for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Ooh, I don't know. It's between back or legs. I love training legs because I have learned to just drive myself to the ground from Haley. Um, but back, I've always loved really training as well. So I don't know, it's a toss up between the 2.
Well, I'm the gym bro, so I would just curl, basically till eternity. But hey, that's me. Well, actually, in all honesty, back might be another thing too, because that's honestly my easiest workout. Just because I just, it just is like that's what if I ever see that on my schedule, I'm like, it's like basically having the day off, kind of, where it's just like I know I'm not gonna get sore really, or I'm not gonna do anything like that, just because it's just almost impossible for me to do. I know that if I switch things up and tried some things, it might, but it's like your body just gets so used to it, where it's like I know that I'm going to be able to sleep well at night and still be good. So that would be that for me at least. But we have to talk cardio because I hate it more than life itself. And from past traumas involving cardio, like we discussed before or earlier on this podcast, what is what is your relationship like with cardio? Because unfortunately, when you do become a bodybuilder, you have to sign a deal with the devil when it comes to cardio.
Yeah, so I honestly don't mind cardio. I actually am a probably a weird person. So in like my off season, I've set amount of time.
Probably a weird person, she says.
Probably a weird person. Um, I have my allotted amount of cardio I need to do for the day. I can break it up to do fasted or post workout. Haley really lets me put it wherever I want, and I'm the weird person that's like, I'm gonna get up and do fasted cardio, get my day started, and just kind of kicks everything off for me. Um, and I know that my body is also very stubborn, so I know my cardio is also always going to get to a very high point towards the end of my prep. So I will find things to entertain myself, whether it's listening to podcasts or YouTube channels, or the next big thing on Netflix. Really, I will find a way to entertain myself, and I just won't pay attention how long I'm on there.
That was my thing, but then here's the thing. I did it so long that I ran out of shows and movies to watch. So then I was like, okay, now what? So that became a problem because like I had like during COVID, I just walked like all the time, but then I was on the treadmill downstairs and like I literally ran out of movies. Like so I watched probably about like 100 different movies and like I ran out because like I've already seen like enough movies as it is. I'm like a huge cinephile, but yeah, that's the only other problem that I could really deal with. But I do got to ask you about Haley because she was the one person where when I was just seeing her Instagram, I was like, "There's no way she's this nice," and she's like that disarming. It's like there's no way she's lying. And then I met her and I was like, "Oh wait, she is." Was that disarming to you too? No, as well. Just like when you meet people like that, it's kind of weird because like you expect them to like be putting on an act, but then when you're like, "Oh, it's not an act. They're just actually just like that."
Yeah, uh, it was it was nice to actually have that in a coach, and she's so supportive, and definitely has the eye for the changes that are happening with my body. So thank God I have her because I look at myself, I'm like, Haley, nothing's changing. And she's like, you're an idiot. But she's also so good at pushing me harder than I will ever probably push myself. But I've learned to put myself close to maybe the limit that Haley pushes me. And that has been the most beneficial in my off season training and even when I'm in prep, just not letting the fact that I'm in prep mentally allow me to start lifting lighter just because I think I need to lift lighter.
Well, and there's a fine line too in finding your limit because I know I'm only saying that because I know way too many idiots that have injured themselves trying to find their limit. What has that been like for you, sort of finding that limit for you personally? Because it's a dangerous slope, especially when you're getting started. Now, as you get more developed in the sport, it's obviously much easier to know, like, okay, this is my limit. But was that a struggle for you at all when you first were trying to figure out like where your limit's at? Because a lot of people sometimes take things a little too far that way.
I think I was probably on the opposite spectrum. I don't think I was pushing myself hard enough for the first couple of years that I was training. Really, it would be like going through the motions. I relied
Were you that
super.
one person scrolling through Instagram like on the leg machine, basically?
No, I wouldn't be that bad.
Everyone's like, "How many more sets do you have?" And just like, quiet. I'm doing this. Or yeah, I had one person do that to me one time because I just said, "How many sets for you?" Because they've been on for 15 minutes, and I literally was like, I was looking around to see if anyone else was in the gym, so I could just straight up strangle this person. Then, but unfortunately, there were other people in the gym.
Yeah, I definitely was on the opposite side. I didn't push myself hard enough in the gym, and I relied very heavily on if I had a good workout based on what my watch would tell me for calorie burn. So I became way too reliant on it. So then once I started doing personal training sessions with Haley and I saw how heavy I could go because most of the machines are set up so I can't see what the weight is at. She just sets it and tells me to go. So yeah.
That's awesome. And I gotta say, like, I was that person too, where like I would look at my step count and be like, I had a good day if I did 10,000 steps, not knowing that if I did 10,000 steps in like a 14-hour period, it's not that much. Like, you're not, if you do the math, like, you're not really burning that much as opposed to doing it in like an hour and a half or something like that. So, yeah, that was another thing that I really, learned myself with that. But sleep is the most important thing in this lifestyle. And I don't care what anyone says, it's the most important in any lifestyle. But what is your relationship like with sleep? Because when it comes to being bipolar, bodybuilders and sleep are about as bipolar as it gets.
Yeah, definitely towards the end of prep it gets very difficult. I start probably regularly taking valerian root. It's a natural herbal supplement that's actually more effective than melatonin and doesn't mess with the body as much. I recommend valerian root. It definitely helps with my sleep cycles and just having better bedtime routines, getting off your phone, turning off any blue lights. I'll actually switch to actually reading like hardcover books because then my eyes get really tired and that forces my brain to shut off and actually go to bed.
Wait a minute, you can read?
I know it's magical.
Huh. Well, I guess we learn things new every day about people from Wisconsin, but I'm sorry, the Game of Thrones finale was too disappointing for me. Anything that has Valyrian in it, I will not touch ever. It just brings up too many painful memories for me.
It
I,
was a horror.
I'm just one of those people where I almost broke my TV, where I was just like, "What is going on? Like, are they playing a joke on us?" And then when I realized that they weren't playing a joke on us, I was just like,
Yeah,
I haven't been this disappointed since prom senior year. Okay, like, so let's be honest.
yeah. They'll
So
get together and watch it every week, and when we saw it, we're like,
hmm
"What just happened?"
yeah, I was like, I was at a loss for words. Like, I called my brother and I just said, "What the f?" And then we talked for like an hour. Still to this day, if we ever want to get each other mad, we just talk about like how we would fix it and how we would do that. So yep, and to think those guys actually got paid money to do that. So life isn't fair, everyone. But I mean, on top of all this stuff with your lifestyle and everything, what was your friends and family's reaction like when you announced them like, "Hey, I want to be a bodybuilder"? It's not something that a lot of people hear, especially in Wisconsin.
But especially in Wisconsin, it's not our lifestyle. So my mom's side of the family is not a very fit group of individuals, how I will put it. Um, as I said, I come from a family where I'm genetically gifted with large legs, but that is not always a benefit if you're not active with them. Um, so when I competed in my first show, a comment that my grandma had made to me, and I know her opinion has changed since this, but the first time she saw me after, she said that I was going to gain all my weight back, which she wasn't wrong. I did gain a lot of weight back, but I also stuck with bodybuilding. So it's just more of getting that under control. Um, I do have some relatives that just don't understand it, don't it's not that they don't support it, but they 100% do not understand why I do it. And it's nothing that they would ever even think about touching. Um, with
What do you tell them when they ask you, like, why do you do it? Because I think a lot of people that are just listening to this would like to hear that answer, because a lot of people in the general public have that same exact opinion that they do. Is like, why would you do anything like this?
I love seeing how far I can push my body. That's honestly, like, that is it. I wanna see how far I can take it. Um, with Scott's family, they have known me from 200-pound Megan to all the way through the most recent prep Megan, so they've seen all of the cycles, and we do a lot with his family, so they're actually super supportive. They're with me for a lot of my prep. We have a lot of family holidays that I'm with them, and, like, they'll make sure that there's, like, cucumbers or something I'm allowed to snack on at the family events. But yeah, they're very accepting. My mom and dad are super supportive of it. I think my mom wishes she could do it. It's just not her thing. But I had found out a year or two into bodybuilding that my dad had actually competed when he was younger. So that was an awesome kind of bonding experience that we had for me finding that out.
I was gonna say, how does that not come up though? Like in any conversation, be like, "Oh, so you were a bodybuilder and you never told us this entire time?"
Yeah, so apparently it was before he was with my mom. So I don't know like what it was all about, but we were sitting at Wisconsin. We were sitting at a bar and we were comparing like forearm like vascularity, like our forearm veins. And he's like made some comment that my mom actually brought up. She's like, you know, your dad used to compete. And I was like, okay, and you guys are telling me this now.
It was more like this. You know, your dad used to compete, by the way.
Her birthday and we were like feeding her Long Island's and me and my dad were just talking.
Like, and anyone that thinks that I'm over exaggerating this with Wisconsin, there is an actual law in Wisconsin that if you're 15 years old, you can drink with a legal guardian in a bar.
Yep.
So I'm not over exaggerating when I think this. Like, it used to be a thing back in my mom's day where people would literally drive from, I'm only about an hour away from the Wisconsin border. They would literally drive over the border to Wisconsin just because you could legally drink there then. Like, that was a thing that they did in high school, really, is so, but
Yeah, and the drinking age used to be 18 for the like longest time, and then for Wisconsin to get federal funding to fix our roads, we had to up the drinking age to 21.
otherwise, it wouldn't be, and I would probably I would have been a huge fan of Wisconsin from the age of 18 to 21. But they had to go in I mean, they had to kneel to the pressure of the public of the the federal government. But I guess. But yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. Again, I gotta apologize for anyone that's not from the Upper Midwest. But then again, you're not one of us, so screw you,
You don't
really. If
understand.
you're listening, you don't understand. I talk to too many damn people from Florida talking about the damn weather. So anytime I get a fellow Midwesterner on here, I like to bring up some Midwest stuff. So you know what, sue me. I don't care. But Megan, if someone were to walk up to you and say, we made a decision, you can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding, and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing that you'd like to see changed?
I would love for there not to be crossover at the national level. I think regionals is the time to figure out which division you truly love and have a passion for. But when you go to a national level, it should be solely focused on one division. There's too many people crossing over and winning pro cards in multiple divisions and taking that away from someone who's solely devoted to their division.
I I mean, I've said this a million times, but I honestly do not understand it either, because like I've heard the times, where like people won their physique card and then they also won their figure card at the same show, and it's like that should not happen. Like if you're as big enough to be a physique champion, you're too big to be a figure champion, and vice versa. So I don't get that. I don't understand it. And I wish that they would change as well. And also the judge impartiality would, you know, help as well, because there's going to be human error in any sport. Being a baseball pitcher, I can't tell you how many times I wanted to tell the catcher, move aside on this one. Don't even try to block this pitch. But, that would have got me in trouble. So I never did that. But I was just thinking about it. But yeah, just to fix that as well. And the fact that like if you're a pro in this sport, you should not have to work a day job. Like that should be one of those things where it's like you should be taken care of, where you should be able to just focus on this, because this sport is hard enough as it is. It shouldn't even call it a sport. It should be called a job, really honestly, because it takes up almost as much time or more for a lot of people than like an actual job would. And it's just, yeah. And I mean, on top of like we're talking about the jobs, how do you balance your life? Because that is something where, I mean, just doing both of these things, having a regular job and just doing bodybuilding, it's not easy.
No, it's definitely gotten easier though. I am a very schedule-oriented person. I have on my work calendar blocked off when I'm doing cardio, when I'm at the gym, when I'm eating my meal. So like everything is down to a schedule. And with having that all blocked off, it really helps me keep my work separate from my free time to train.
I wish I'm gonna have to send you a photo after we're done here. You could see my desk that I'm doing this on, and you can see that I'm the exact opposite of you. We're literally because I remember when we were trying to reschedule after I realized that the podcast wasn't gonna work for the last night. Like she was looking at her calendar, and I was like, okay, I haven't had a calendar since like kindergarten, basically when they made you have a planner, basically, or like elementary school. But I'm more one of those people where it's like literally you could call me right now and be like, hey, you want to go do something? I'll be like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. I don't got any plans anyway. So
Calendars that I maintain.
oh yeah, and that's I'm not gonna lie, that's a female trend that I've found in a lot of women that I've known to as well, where they have to have they have their calendars and everything. Where I just say probably the best thing about being on the male side of things is that I literally wake up, give me 15 seconds, and I'm ready for the day. A good 15 seconds. So that's all I'm gonna say about that.
When we have any events going on, if he's asked if he's free, he asks me if we're free, and then I can check for him.
See, I'm like, see, he's one of those indoor cats. I'm more of an outdoor cat. I'm free range, like I can do whatever I want. He found a suitable partner, so good for him. Round of applause for him for doing that. But I'll sow my wild oats a little bit longer, before I settle down and bless a person with my presence. That's why I tell myself as I'm crying, watching The Notebook, eating ice cream, that I'm gonna bless someone with my presence. This is all an act, everyone. I'm like the most insecure person on the planet, and I have no self value whatsoever. So I'm just laying it out there. So I'm not an obnoxious prick. I'm just a deeply sensitive person. So I mean we're opening up here on the podcast as we're wrapping things up here. So I appreciate that. But yeah. And is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
Yeah, so I would say shout out to Haley Wagner, amazing coach. I couldn't be where I am in bodybuilding without her. Scott, my boyfriend, who has been with me for the last 10 years and has seen every body shape, size,
Bless his soul.
bless him, put me at all aspects of prep and off season. Um, I would also say my gym wives who are super supportive of me. Um, Ooh, and then I would say also call out to Haley's actual fiance, Bill, who does all my body work to keep me functioning on a day-to-day basis.
Well, okay, and this was also something that I just thought of now. Like, one of the reasons why I especially focus on the female side of the sport is just because of the DMs that I've heard some of them get. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, how do you even function like that? First of all, how do you react to that? Because I would have, basically broken my phone in half after one day and been like, I'm never using the internet ever again. And second of all, how does Scott deal with that? Because for me, I would find it funny, but then also at times I'd be like, okay, this is really weird.
I definitely get really weird messages, but Scott and I will laugh at them together. So we're okay with it. Like I had a really weird person ask like for my posing videos they wanted to pay for. I'm like, yeah, hard pass, not happening, man. Um, yeah, and then you get these really off-brand companies that are like, you want to be our sponsor? And I was like, no. So it's all over, but Scott and I just laugh at
It could
them.
have been the next Amazon or Google, and you just shot it down.
Basically, yeah.
No, but yeah, I even had one guy that thought first of all that I was a woman and wanted to be my sugar daddy, and I was like, honey, you can't afford me. Let's be honest, So, but yeah, I like even being associated with this type of lifestyle. I have gotten messages myself, so it's like I've gotten about 0.1% of what most of my guests have on. So it just makes me appreciate the guests, even more of what they go through. But again, Megan, I cannot thank you enough for coming on this podcast and sharing your journey, and most of all, being a good sport. I appreciate that. She's letting me get my Wisconsin anger out in a healthy way, as opposed to just going across the border and just trying to burn down like Lambeau Field or something like that, which is
Yeah,
eventually what.
allow that.
well, I'll just offer you guys a couple of booze, and you guys will be drunk to notice anyway. But I will have to say, I appreciate that, and I do gotta here. This I'm gonna regret this. I have to give the Packers props for being a good football organization and for doing all that stuff, but you're never gonna hear me say that again. So anyone that's from Minnesota, I'm not gonna renounce my Viking card. I respect the accomplishments, but I hate their very soul as human beings, and I wish that they would be swiped from the face of the earth. But they are successful, and I will give them. See, but here's the thing: that's how a high of a person I am, because you will never hear a Packer person admit anything like that to a Minnesota person. So you know what? I'm
Yeah,
being
no,
the better person, while they're just stuffing cheese in their face and getting diabetes and whatever. I'm not even gonna get into it, okay? Because you can already tell it's starting to get dark here, and I'm not gonna get to that place. But again, before things get dark, Megan, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
thank you. I was glad to do it. It was so much fun.
Absolutely. Well, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing off. Have a great day, everyone.